Get out of here 10 past the top of the hour.
Yep, that's fine. All right.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. Citizens are advised to take the following steps. If exposed, remove from the phone. The emergency broadcast system.
Podcast for the curious mind. I don't know what that means.
Broadcasting live from a German-made microphone deep within the multifamily bunker. I am Corey Hussing here with Joshua Shea. Excited to have you on, Josh. Thank you for joining our show. I told the guys we were having a podcast addict coach on, and or a porn addict coach on, and they must have just bailed on me because. Do you get that a lot? Pretty uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? It's getting better over time, but I have had times that I've been booked on podcasts, booked on radio shows, even booked to give speeches by some people who thought it was a good idea, and I've had within minutes of being ready to go do a library speech, 3 hours away, get a phone call that
Oh no.
the head librarian just found out what the activities coordinator was planning and put a stop to it. So I'm not going and giving a speech that night. So yeah, it's one of those things, and I usually say this 45 minutes into a podcast, but you can do this without getting graphic. You can talk about porn, you can talk about porn addiction without getting graphic about it, but it just scares people. It's one of those words. There are certain words out there that I think people are afraid to say for somehow fear that just saying it out loud endorses it. Like if you say the word porn, you're totally pro porn. It's like saying the word Hitler.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Exactly. It's one of those.
I
Yeah. It's one of
can't
those.
say Hitler, Yeah, and I think that's what it is still for a lot of people, and that's one of the reasons I'm out here doing this is because we can't talk about porn addiction unless we're willing to talk about porn, the concept. We don't need to get into the nitty gritty of what's on the screen, what are in those pages of that magazine, but we need to grow up and recognize that this is becoming a huge problem under our nose. And there's a line of demarcation, probably at this point, right around 36, 37 years old, of a world of people who don't remember what the world was like before the internet and those who do remember. And once it comes to the internet, especially high speed internet, that's where you're talking about your greatest concentration of people who have issues with pornography. But none of the people in power who can do anything or devote resources to it really know about it because it's not among their peer group and nobody wants to talk about it.
Now, you've written 4 books
Yep.
on porn addiction in different phases. Um, what started you on this? Because, like you said, it's very much a Nick subject. It's something you didn't tell anyone about if you were dealing with it. Uh, what was the process of you going into speaking freely about the addiction of porn?
Well, I myself was a porn addict for 24 years, and I sought help finally in early 2014. That's when I stopped using pornography. And I, being a geek, being a bookworm, went to the internet, went to my bookstore. There was nothing really out there about pornography addiction. I could dig up academic texts online. And I love reading stuff like the New England Journal of Medicine. I like reading those kinds of studies. But I know for most people, it's like me reading Shakespeare. It's just not going to happen. So there was a lot of great information that was starting to come out 10 years ago, but was not being reported on anywhere. And I just saw this opening in the market. And I had been a journalist for about 20 years prior, so I had skills, I had connections when it came to getting books published. I just decided that I would write my story, write a book, about the last 5-6 years of my porn addiction, how that brought the magazine company that I was part owner of down, how it brought everything in my life down. And I thought that would be it, one and done. But I got such a huge response, especially from partners of porn addicts, that this thing just kind of snowballed. And here I am now, 8 years later. I'm a full-time porn addiction and betrayal trauma coach at this point, because there's so many people who are just craving help out there to try to get this monkey off their back.
Right. And like I've been doing research on the internet, so I take that with its grain of salt. But I just sort of wanted to get the idea of, if people thought that pornography was actually something harmful. And, I see a lot of articles that when you do a Google search on it, I say like the first 50% is like, well, it could be, there's probably some negative effects, but it seems like this overall tone of like, it's not as bad as the religious people make it out to be. And I think a lot of that has been pushed off onto religion itself. Like, oh, it's religion that says, looking at porn is bad, and religion is a fallacy. So therefore, looking at porn can't be that bad. Have you come across that a lot? Or
Oh yeah, and I mean, and everything's worse when you let the religious people touch it. But the fact is, there is enough information out there. There is enough study out there. The scientists and the experts have been looking at this for 20 years now, and I can tell you that in my own research, I have never seen a study, ever seen a report that says porn is healthy. The best I've ever seen is that, well, it won't affect a certain type of person, but we know how it will affect so many people, and just its role in society and how the young people are viewing sexuality. That's a lot of the issue with this. It's not even necessarily are they addicted or not. It's how pornography is being used, how male and female, or male, female relationships are being formed. One of the most eye-opening moments I had was right before the pandemic started. I was at a college here in Maine giving a speech about pornography addiction to a women's health group. And I did my whole, song and dance routine, and then had a Q&A, and a woman raised her hand and said, "Have you ever heard of or do you run into a lot of women our age who don't want to have sex with virgin guys?" And I said, no, you're the first person who's ever mentioned it to me. And I saw the eyes sort of light up of a lot of the young women in the room. And I said, okay, let's talk about this. And they talked about how so many young guys, college age, if they're losing their virginity, so many of them have watched so much porn that it has become sex education to them. And those of us who have had regular sexual relationships, healthy sexual relationships, we know that porn is fiction. People don't have sex like that, or at least people that we'll ever meet don't have sex like that. And the thing is, if you have been watching pornography almost every day of your life from 12, 13 years old, suddenly, you get up to be 18 years old. And what does every porn movie look like? It looks like the man being aggressive towards the woman, the man saying horrible things to the woman, the man, bending her any way he wants. And that doesn't even get to the point of how just about all these videos finish in a very degrading way. And that isn't real. And that is what a lot of young virgin men bring to the table these days. So there are you get this incel culture because young women don't want to deal with these kinds of guys whose minds have just been warped by pornography.
do you think that we're talking about almost two different groups and how it affects them? There's the 30 plus age, or like for me, I lived before the internet. I hit my teenager years right as we got the internet in our household. And then you've got, like you were talking about, these college age kids that, since they've been babies, they've had access to the internet and access to whatever they want to search. But do you feel like do you feel like the addiction is equal in both age groups?
No, no, not at all. Not at all. And I can point it to this way. Overall, the most recent statistics I've seen point to the overall population of men being between 12 and 18% for pornography addiction. However, if you look at men aged 18 to 30, in a survey not too long ago done by the Barna Group down in Texas, they interviewed, I think it was 400 or 500 men, and almost 33% self identified as having a problem with pornography, developing a problem with pornography, or having full on porn addiction. So it is much, much more prevalent among younger people because they grew up with high speed internet. You are just not going to get as addicted when you get one Playboy magazine a month in 1985 as you are sitting in front of a website these days that literally has hundreds of thousands of hours of porn on it. I saw recently the biggest porn website, Pornhub, reported something like if you ran every video on their site backward, only watching it once, it would bring you back to Civil War times.
Wow, that's a great stat.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pornhub, for letting us know that. What do you think? I mean, what do you think when you first started? I mean, when for you did you realize like this is a problem? It needs to be changed.
Well, I knew that it wasn't acceptable because I grew up with a very Catholic mother and father. They were the kind who we had HBO, and I could watch Rambo, I could watch, hardcore violence. But oh my God, if a breast or a butt went on the screen, they flipped out, change a channel, change a channel. So when I first got my hands regularly on pornography, I knew I had to hide it from them. So I knew from the beginning there was something taboo with it. But really, the first time that I recognized I was different than my peers was around 17 years old. I was on the soccer team in high school, and one day after a practice, we went to one of my friend's house, and he had a VCR with a porno tape, and he popped it in there, and everybody was making jokes about it like it was Mystery Science Theater 3000 and having a really good time. But I felt very out of place. I felt very uncomfortable, very awkward. This was not the way that I viewed pornography. This is not the way that, I interacted with pornography. And that was really the first time that I realized this was something that I even had to hide from my peers.
I mean, you would, back maybe 30 years ago, like you said, it was always, you got your magazines from a shady gas station or some shady type of place, especially in the rural towns I lived in. There was one gas station I remember that had a little porn aisle out in the back for, when the truckers used to stop by,
They're all,
And-
pss, 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 pss. Hey, there's
Yes.
a hole over here, bro.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very hot.
Every mom and pop adult or every mom and pop video store before Blockbuster and the big guys took over had the sliding, saloon doors or the beaded drapes in the back to go back to the adult room. And, I was able to do that. When I was 14, I got up the balls one day to just go back there, and I grabbed some tapes, and I was 14 years old. I went and I was able to rent them. And it was kind of the same thing with beer in my area, where I was also an alcoholic for 22 years. And I would finish a day of high school, before I got my license, be on my bike, ride to the video store, rent 2 porno movies, go to the little package store and buy 4 beers, and then ride home on my bike with all the, my treasure clanking in my backpack. And that was my life for many, many years when I was a kid.
What do you think was the changing moment for this new generation with the internet that has brought, because I feel like every person I talk to about this subject, there's always some sort of guilt associated with it for the most part. I notice it to be different among women. Almost almost sort of a bragging fashion when it comes to viewing porn. But with men, it seems to be still to this day, like you're not, they're not bragging about it, and when it's brought up, it's like, I wish I wasn't doing it, or, along those lines. What do you think the mentality behind that is?
Well, we're still in a very puritanical society. And, we grew up I think we grew up, our age group grew up with very conservative parents. Even the most liberal parents from the 1940s and 50s were super conservative by today's estimation. And I think that really what happened was all this technology came flying at us in the 90s and early zeros, and those of us in Generation X just kind of stood by and watched the world burn. And our kids and the younger people got their hands on this stuff that we didn't even understand. And then when you bring in brain chemistry and dopamine and how people just want it and want it and want it, and that's the basis of all addiction, is that okay, we're giving every 10 and 12-year-old kid the best porn computer in the world in the iPhone or in the smartphone, and not giving them any guidance. And gee, they're getting these huge dopamine dumps. And we've always in advertising used sex to sell, so I think it was just kind of a natural thing that was going to happen, because those in our age group, when the technology came around, didn't know what to do with it, didn't know what could possibly happen, didn't know that this could cause potential problems.
What type of problems does it cause in relationships? Because I've heard some couples say, well, we watch it together, or,
And I truly believe that some people can use pornography and some couples can use pornography absolutely fine. Just like there are people who can drink and don't become alcoholics. I can go to a casino and win $20, lose $20, whatever. I have a good time. I don't have that gambling addiction gene, but it's just for so many people, so many youngsters who are left alone with computers. That's their first, before they're ever able to try alcohol, before they ever try any recreational drugs. There they are getting that dopamine from the computer because they're seeing sexual activity. And our bodies are wired to have that dopamine hit when we get that kind of sexual fix, sexual imagery. And it feels good, obviously. Looking at naked people doing naked things is something that most of us generally do like doing. But too much of that, it essentially screws with your neurotransmitters, and you flood your dopamine receptors, serotonin, oxytocin, all the pleasure centers in your mind, and then it has to escalate. And that's when you get people using every day, hours of time at a day. And we're still in a society where you don't talk about this stuff. We're in a society where nobody wants to admit that they masturbate. Nobody wants to admit that they look at pornography. Nobody wants to seem like the perverted, square peg in the round hole, despite the fact that 90% of married men under 50 look at porn once a month. 60% of women under 50 look at porn once a month. But we all pretend that it's not happening because we don't want to seem like the odd person out.
Introduce Devin and Chris May to you. These are my co-hosts on here. Thanks for joining, guys. Thanks for leaving me be.
Sorry. I just hope I come across crystal clear this time.
No, you're good. So in your through your last, was it 7 years, you've been a coach on this?
I've been a coach for 3 years. When the pandemic hit and I couldn't make money doing speeches at colleges or other groups because everybody shut down, I realized if I was going to keep in this line of work, I had to develop some other skills. So I got certified as a coach, both for porn addiction and for betrayal trauma, which is what most partners have to deal with. And oddly enough, I found out I love working one-on-one with people. As much as I have an ego and love being in front of a crowd and making people laugh and talking about this stuff, there is something really special about working one-on-one with somebody, helping them overcome this problem. Because I didn't really have those people when I started into this 8 years ago. People were still not talking about this, not realizing it was a real thing.
What's the common denominator between all these discussions with people you have on a one-on-one basis, and how pornography has affected their life?
Unresolved trauma, easily.
How so?
Unresolved trauma from childhood, usually because of some kind of sexual or emotional abuse, either by parents or by other family members or friends. Almost everybody has some kind of baggage that they haven't worked out. And that's why ultimately that's when they started using, and they began to learn that even though they were able to put that trauma on a shelf for a little while, well, gee, if I was able to get through this horrible thing that happened in my life, and pornography helped me, just like pornography and alcohol helped me, maybe these things could make a bad day okay. And then maybe they can make an okay day better. And then pretty soon you're using them all the time because they just make you feel better. It's a way to escape the world. Porn addiction isn't that different than any other addiction out there. 95% of addiction is the same. I tell people, food addiction doesn't take place in your stomach, and cocaine addiction doesn't take place in your nose. Sex and porn addiction doesn't take place between your legs. All addiction takes place up in the brain.
Do you think the majority of people that are dealing with this that you've come across, um, the effect it has on their partners, like it's usually a one-sided type of situation. It's not that both are participating in it. Usually one side finds out, and then like, because I went through something similar, and I lost a serious relationship because of porn addiction. And I think that it almost sort of blew my mind that it caused issues with my partner at the time. And I guess it's probably good to discuss like what a partner goes through when they discover that. Like, what have you encountered in your coaching process when it
Well,
comes
it
to?
really goes one of two ways or both ways. The betrayed, usually the woman, um, first is wondering what she did wrong, how she didn't measure up. Was she not pretty enough? Was she not wild enough in bed? Did she not do what he needed to do in bed? Why is she lacking? Why did he have to go and see other women and satisfy himself to other women? That's one of the big ways it goes. The other way it goes, which is even worse, is when it becomes, who is this man? Here's a guy who he knew that I didn't like pornography. He told me he didn't look at pornography. And now I find out for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, he's been using pornography almost daily. If he's been able to successfully lie to me about that for that long, what else has he lied about? Who is this person? How can I trust them? And usually the people who suffer this kind of betrayal trauma have childhood trauma in their life, and this opens up some wounds. It's interesting in that when I work with either porn addicts or the spouses, a lot of my work is not that different because it comes down to addressing early traumas that give us our survival skills. And when our survival skills are challenged, that's when the problems come. I created survival skills when I was 4 or 5 years old because I was in an environment with a babysitter that was psychotic. And there was all kinds of abuse of every kind happening there. And I survived it. I got through it the way that I could. But the survival techniques of a 5-year-old in crisis can't be the survival techniques of a healthy 25-year-old man or a healthy 35-year-old man. You develop those techniques And ultimately, you live by them and you die by them, because you can stop creating these coping mechanisms. You can stop learning how to deal with problems, and pretty soon there you are, when anything goes wrong, escaping to the porn or escaping to the bottle or whatever it is your vice is. You're just trying to get away, and that's your way to self-soothe. It didn't matter whether I was 15 years old in high school or 35 years old and running my own companies. It was always there for me. I could always count on porn to make me feel better and make me feel in control.
Sunshine brings up a good question. Why would you rather watch other people do the dirty when you could be having the real thing with the person right here? Why is that?
Well, when you become an addict, what you have to understand is it isn't really about the person on the screen. Think about those people who are hardcore alcohol addicts. They're not drinking for fun anymore. They're drinking to stay alive. When I talk to somebody or help somebody who's in a critical stage of porn addiction, like I was when I got help, it doesn't matter what's on the screen. It's not about sex. It's about just getting those chemicals so you can keep going with your day. You don't want to look at porn. You don't care about porn. You don't even care what's on the screen. As long as it gets you off so you can get that chemical rush, that's fine. It really, and that's one of the things that is the hardest to explain to partners, is that this never had anything to do with you. I became a porn addict at 12 years old. I met my wife when I was 26. I had a 14-year jump on her. How could she have had anything to do with my pornography addiction? I obviously enjoy, intimate relations with her, but I got to a point where I was so ill with my addiction, I wasn't thinking about that anyway. And talk to somebody who is a heroin addict. How much sex do they want to have? They don't. Talk to people who are, alcohol addicts. How much sex do they want to have? They don't. Most addicts lose their libido, lose their sexual drive. It just gets confused with this because, again, it's naked people. You can even talk about actual intercourse addiction. There are people who will pass up sex with a willing partner at home to go out and have risky sex with the kind of partners that you would cross the street to avoid in real life. And it's not about, screwing somebody. It's about getting that chemical rush from the dopamine and all those other pleasure centers. So while it's a good question, it really has nothing to do with that other person in bed with you.
That's part of the, I guess, working with betrayal trauma, because that's the person that's the recipient of that. Probably you see a lot of questions like
Yeah.
that asked in the early
Absolutely,
stages.
absolutely. And it's really, it's one of those things where I try to tell them, you're even perhaps lucky that he's an addict, because he's not choosing another woman over you. He's choosing the chemicals over you. If he wasn't a porn addict and you caught him, he's just a bad husband or a bad boyfriend. If he's actually sick, that takes you out of the equation. You have nothing to do with it. It's like if you bake sugary treats and your partner, is a diabetic, it's not your fault because you bake sugary treats. It's one of those things that happens.
It's a good point. I do like my sugary treats.
Put the cupcake down.
Yes. Never. Any questions, you guys? I mean, I find this very fascinating because, you can't, I remember, I'll give you an example while you guys think of some questions too. Like when my addiction first started, I don't know, it started years and years ago. But my dad, and the story is sort of funny because my dad had a cleaning business and he would clean doctors' offices at nights. And that's when I discovered the internet. Is I would do all my cleaning chores first, bang them out, and then I'd sneak into Dr. Hooven's office and started looking at porn. And that probably lasted for about 6-8 months until I accidentally downloaded something onto his desktop that I didn't know how how to erase. You know,
You gotta
and
do
I-
that. You gotta right click up there, bro, and like.
Dad had no clue. It was full
you know?
panic. I remember I was in full panic, and
He just hitting the space bar or
yeah,
something to get out of that
it was
situation.
right on the taskbar, and I
Yeah.
had no clue. I could see it.
He's
to
like,
this day.
why are we out of tissue paper?
So, and you know, and this is like this is I don't know, early 2000s, so it's like an 8 gigabit picture, you know, of a woman. So like and then I remember it was a couple of days, and my parents were heavily religious in their church, and I was being raised the same way. And so I remember it was about maybe, I think it was the next day or the day after that, because the doctor got back into his office, and I remember my dad getting a call during the day asking for him to come into the office early to talk with HR. And I knew, you know, so I had to sit all day waiting for that to happen. And then Dad goes in. He didn't take us in to clean that night because we would help clean. And then he gets out, calls my mom. And I remember watching my mom's face as she's listening to my dad talk, and then her eyes slowly looking at me with the most evil stare I'd ever received in my life. And they had printed off every porn site I had visited. And originally they had thought that it was my dad that had been looking at it, you know. So my poor dad
Ooh.
had to tell him it was his son.
Did he throw you under the bus?
Oh man, it was not a good 3 months.
Were some of those websites ones you didn't actually go to though?
Oh no, I went to all of them.
How many
but
miles did you have to run for that?
It was like 7 pages of stuff. And so then we had to go to the religious leaders in our church, and mom, you know, had the printed sheet. I remember her asking the elder if she wanted him to read off the ones she had highlighted that were extra gross. You know, so it was just a horrible, but even then, you know, I didn't stop. You know, even then I found other ways to go about it, and so forth. And
I'll
and
be
that's
honest, I never searched porn on my computer at home when I was in high school, any of that.
Well, did you even have internet in high school back then?
Yeah.
No, he ran in the backyards with the
Bet.
animals.
My neighbor actually, he worked at the dump in town, right? And so like he would always find the dirty mags, and he actually kept them and collected them and kept them in his garage. So me and, you know, I grew up next door to these guys, like they're practically family too, and that was our porn stash, was John's Hustler collection, you know, Playboys and the whole shebang.
I mean, even then, that's a form of addiction, right? I mean, like you were going back, sneaking. It was exciting. All that type of stuff that comes with the high of you know, no different than getting high off of meth, I guess, as far as the result you're trying to achieve. So, I mean, I think this is interesting because I don't ever remember it being described as really an addiction. It was just like it was just natural but available. I mean, they've been using porn for thousands of years to get things done.
Well, and if you look back now with like the pandemic and everything we went through, you know, people realize that they can make a lot of money selling home videos and doing this stuff because they're cooped up in the house. And, you know, you might have, you know, I actually know a guy, him and his wife, you know, he told me, he's like, during the pandemic, we were like, why not? Everyone else is making $10,000, $15,000 a month. And, you know, everybody watches this stuff, you know, like, why not just build a small following, help us through the tough times and see what happens. And it was weird because like he'd get awkward and kind of shy talking about it, but like he would show me how much money they made, and he was just like, we almost can't stop. Like, it's not we're addicted to it, but it's like it is a humongous side hustle.
I think I know what you're talking about.
We naturally do on the, you know, like we do behind closed doors and we don't let people in, but now we're giving people this sneak peek, and it's, you know, it's paying us handsomely. So what do we do? No, this was someone here in Tennessee.
Oh shit.
Well, yeah. When you think about it, those types of sites which did blow, I think that the legacy of the pandemic when it comes to pornography is going to be how the do-it-yourself porn sparked up. You know, OnlyFans being the biggest one of those. You went from 200,000 people making content on OnlyFans on January 1st, 2020, to 3 million people making content on OnlyFans just 2 years later, January 1st, 2022. And what is interesting, one of my books I wrote is actually called Porn in the Pandemic. And I interviewed a bunch of these OnlyFans girls and guys, and a lot of cam models, I guess you call them. And what was interesting was a lot of them who were not already there jumped at it because they needed to make money, and that's perfectly fine. But what was interesting was when I interviewed them 4 or 5 months later to find out how things were going, a lot of them, especially the women who I spoke with, the younger women who I spoke with, they weren't talking about it in terms of, oh, look how much money I'm making now. They were happy with it, but what they were talking about was how they felt special, how they felt loved for the first time, how they felt like, I remember one girl telling me that, she can't get a date in real life. And she's got guys from all over the world who are wanting to fly her different places. And what a lot of these models were saying to me sounded exactly like porn addiction. These girls were after the dopamine hit, and they loved to be on cam for 6, 7 hours because they were constantly told how beautiful they were. They were getting a high from it. It wasn't just transactional in nature. And I think that's ultimately what the pandemic's going to be remembered for, is that I believe we're going to start seeing now in another 5 or 10 years people who are addicted to pornography from the producing side of things. Because back when we were young, and they only showed movies in adult theaters. What was there? Probably a couple hundred porn stars at any time. Now you add up all these people on OnlyFans, all these campsites, you've got 4 or 5 million people around the world making pornography now. And there's going to be some kind of reckoning that comes from that. And I believe it's ultimately going to be pornography addiction from the producer side of things. I don't think the producer and the consumer side is, they're just different sides of the same coin. I bet we'll see women and men 40, 45, 50 years old still making pornography, still just trying to get a little bit of love from people, just trying to escape their regular life, because that's why people do it on the consumer's end of things.
Why do you think, or I guess, what do you think is going to be the end result of porn addiction? I mean, I'm sure you see it on an individual basis, but on a global scale, this is still a pretty new experience for, how available it is. And, we're still in the early stages of discovering how addicted people are. Just the fact like 33% of people identify themselves as addicted or having some sort of problem with it. But, some people may argue, well, in the end, it's just porn. I'm just looking at porn. What are the repercussions going to be? Or will there even be any major repercussions because of this porn explosion?
I think what we're going to find is that people end up having less and less sex, which is already happening. The rates of intercourse around the world are dropping at the same time the rates of using pornography are going up. And like I said earlier, yeah, most people can use pornography and not develop any problem with it. But unlike cigarettes or unlike alcohol or unlike drugs, there isn't any warning about it out there. There's no education around it. Remember, in the 80s, talk about the opioid addiction. You go back, you can watch Dragnet from the late 60s, and they're talking about opiates and opioids. You can go back and listen to rap music from the late 70s, early 80s, and they are talking about abusing that stuff. We knew there was an opiate and opioid problem in the early 80s, but it wasn't fashionable to care about it until about 2010, if you were law enforcement or a politician. That's when finally it touched everybody. But we always said that, the Nancy Reagan just say no BS. was, those people who use drugs are from the other side of town. They're from the wrong side of the tracks. You don't want to be like them. They're the black sheep. Well, it got to a point where everybody's family had at least one black sheep in it, and then people started caring. You look at the history of alcohol in the United States. The American Psychiatric Association didn't even really consider alcohol disorder or alcohol use disorder until the 1970s, 45 years after AA had already started. I think that it's going to take a long time for medicine and for the establishment to catch up with it. And until then, it's going to be people like me, screaming at the top of their lungs about it, going on shows like yours talking about this. And eventually, hopefully, I think if every health class in ninth grade spent one class talking about this, you'd see a big drop in pornography addiction rates. Kids don't want to get addicted to pornography. They want to have boyfriends and girlfriends and they want to be normal. But it gets to that day where you try to put it down and you can't. And I think that, the first thing that we need to do is get some overall education going, and get people to, just get comfortable with the taboo of talking about what pornography can do to people.
What do you think the long term, or you've been studying this for a lot longer than the majority of people out there. What are the mental side effects that come from a long-term porn addiction?
Well, it can mean the ruin of your life. You can do such damage to your brain that you can't fix it. I can tell you that I have trouble getting really excited or really depressed about things. I still have trouble getting empathy and compassion for people. I know that I have literally fried parts of my brain because of so much dopamine that was flooded into it, especially during those last few critical years that I was an addict. It does change the brain chemistry. I think that if I had kept going, I would probably be dead by now because it was hand in hand. Alcohol and porn just went together for me, and I think that we're going to see more and more people, and end up basically this incel culture. I think we're going to start to see, adult incels, and I think that it's going to. I think it's going to just become another subculture in society, and we're going to have to figure out how to deal with it. Much like the opium users or heroin users became a subculture in society until the mainstream decided to do something about it.
Well, it's fascinating too because a lot of these porn sites, that the old school, you had to click. I don't even know if that's still the case, but where you click you're 18. You click 18 to enter, with no type of verification whatsoever or anything like that. And I remember being
only
14.
honest people use the internet.
Yeah. Well, and it's so accessible. At that point there was no there, and to this day it's so accessible. There's no verification of age or anything like that. Well, is there a reason behind them allowing it to go just unhaltered whatsoever? We, like you said, we come from this, the 80s and before that, the generations before us, and the ultra religious and the people that were raised with the moral code against that and shunned it and kept it quiet. And you think that when the internet coming out, there would have been some sort of regulation to prevent underage use, but is it maybe on purpose they don't?
I think it's just out of control at this point. It's the snowball that went downhill and just kept going and going because now with things like VPNs, like porn is actually outright banned in India. But if you've got a VPN on your computer, you can look like you're hooking up from anywhere else around the world. And in the UK, they've tried to put age restrictions on things to mixed results. Some of those large websites that make good money do follow the rules. For instance, Pornhub had to take down 75% of its videos a few years ago because they couldn't determine that everybody in the video was of age or everybody consented to be in the video. They lost 75% of their content and never skipped a beat. So some of those larger places do follow along, but it's one of these things where it's all over the world, and you've got all the little fiefdoms of our governments, some trying to fight it, some not trying to fight it, and you just can't do it. It's one of these things, it's too big at this point.
Well, and that's another concern with pornography is the amount of sexual abuse that takes place in the production of these things. I mean, I'm sure that's something you've come across too.
Well, absolutely. But what's changed in the last 10, 15 years is that the vast majority of CSAM, which is child sexual abuse material, which is basically any nude image of a child, it's being made by the children. They're trading it in school. The boys are, pushing it on the girls to make it. The boys are sending pictures of themselves. Most of it is made by underage kids. That's one of those things that, you know, 40 years ago, you didn't have to tell your kid, don't take pictures of your junk and send it to your girlfriend. But that's what's happening these days. And yeah, in Eastern Europe is still a black hole cesspool for this stuff. That's where you get a lot of the camera studios where people are, working supposedly sometimes at the end of a gun for, different mafia groups and whatnot, organized crime making this video because there's big money in it.
I remember them talking about when the movie industries decided whether to adapt to Blu-ray or to HD DVD. The winner was decided by who the porn industry picked to produce their DVDs on. Just to give you an idea, like how powerful the porn is.
Every new medium, when it comes to media and technology, it's exploited by sex first, which I think actually makes sense because sex is a normal, natural, okay thing. The depiction of sex is something we all are hardwired to be interested in. Like we talked about it being around for tens of thousands of years. There are fertility statues of, naked women. It's as long as man could draw on the wall of a cave, he's been drawing naked people. It's a natural thing to be curious, but then it goes to another level. And now that we have high-speed internet delivering these pings of dopamine nonstop, this novel type stuff where, if you bought a Playboy magazine 15, 20 years ago, you had the same 50 pictures for a month. Now it's nonstop. And back then, you couldn't get your hands on really explicit, over-the-top stuff. And if you can spell, man screws goat, you can watch a man screwing a goat these days. That's the world we live in.
You remember? I don't know if you ever watched South Park, but there was an episode where the entire family gets evacuated to a FEMA camp, and they all get 1 hour of internet.
That's right.
And Randy, the father, each time he goes there, he keeps having more and more insane searches into his porn catalog. And it wasn't satisfying him, so he had to go crazier and crazier. That's a sign.
That's what happens. That's exactly what happens. In talking with my clients, in my own experience, is that you will watch things just to get that hit of dopamine that in real life you would run from screaming, that you're not interested in sexually. I'm not interested in watching, screaming German women piss on each other, but for some reason that is what did it for me one day. Or I'm not interested in ever participating in an orgy, but that would do it for me one day. That's one of those things where it's about it's no longer really about sex anymore. It's about just getting what you need out of your brain. And your brain at that point is so fried, it's just telling you nonstop, feed me, feed me, feed me. And you don't care what you're looking at. You don't even remember 5 minutes after you're done what you finished with.
What's your? I know you've got to get going here in the next 10 minutes, but I'm just sort of curious for people that are looking to stop the cycle. I mean, what's your advice that you give them?
Ultimately, number one, if you're going to stop any addiction, you have to have a reason why. You have to, and it has to be the number one priority. A lot of people would like to quit. A lot of people know they should quit, but there are very few people who do quit. And that's anything, whether it's drinking, cigarettes, gambling, anything. You have to find your why you're going to quit. And then ultimately, it's a matter of um, not beating yourself up, trying to remove the shame, understanding that it actually is an illness. Addiction is a brain disease, and taking the steps, step by step, slowly to move away from it. And, step one is pretty much identify your patterns and then start to break them. That's the first key.
What was it for you that made you be like, this is the base root of my problems that I need to handle?
Well, I actually got fired because I was one third owner of the company. I ran it day to day, the magazine company that I was part owner of, and the other two owners fired me because my drinking was so bad. I went to alcohol rehab before I learned anything about my porn addiction. After I was there for a few weeks, my case manager asked me to meet with a certified sex addiction therapist off campus because he could recognize I had some issues. And it was that man who taught me that porn addiction was a real thing. I'd never heard of it up to that point. He made it clear to me that it was an illness, not a moral failing. And he kind of proved to me how it probably affected my life even more than the alcohol did along the way. That was my wake up call because I just thought pornography was something that I engaged when I was drunk. It was just a bad choice I made when I was drunk, but it was in and of itself a complete separate addiction.
Do you find that happens a lot? People that are
Absolutely, absolutely. And the number one thing I have to watch for when I'm dealing with my clients is that they aren't slipping into another addiction. A lot of people will start drinking. A lot of people, especially younger ones, will start playing video games just to try to find another way to get that dopamine. And I don't think maybe you can say playing video games is healthier than looking at porn, or looking at porn is healthier than drinking or whatnot. I had six of one, half a dozen of the other. Have to be careful that it's not just switching addictions to something else.
You guys got any questions for Josh? I appreciate you coming on and talking about this because I'm sure I think we were all I was surprised I booked you, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that. And I'll tell you, when I started doing podcasts about 4.5 years ago, I thought by this point there would be 100 of me out there doing this stuff. And no, nope, still
I
me.
just, I find it interesting. I work nights and I have, water cooler conversations with the guys all the time. And there's actually a guy I used to work with. He had to quit working nights because he would come home, like his wife obviously worked days, and like normal, and he would come home and she'd be gone to work, and for him to go to sleep, he'd have to get on Pornhub, whatever, crank one out real quick to fall asleep. And he noticed that like they're 30 minutes to an hour of passing before he had to go to work. Like it was just, hey, I'm addicted to my damn phone before I can go to bed. Why don't we just, try to bring some intimacy in real quick? And then it just got like, not faked, but like, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't that natural, just development or whatever you have with your partner. It was, she was realizing, oh shoot, like, and I know I'm not going to lose him to other women, but I really don't want him, addicted to his damn phone and the porn. But long story short, he had to quit nights because he traced it all back. He was like, nights is ruining me. He's like, I'm watching porn to go to bed because I can't have intimacy with my wife. It's all this fake stage stuff. He ended up quitting nights and had, tried to, because he knew that that's what it was. Well, he assumed that's what it was, that it was getting him off the tracks. And I was like, wow, it was pretty interesting for, for him to realize that full circle and, to actually do and make that jump. Like I never would have thought, working nights would cause anything like that, or just, but some people, you have those connections and you need that kind of, stimulation with your partner. And you, like you said, you get addicted to that damn phone. And then before you know it, you're watching porn Monday through Sunday just to relieve yourself so you can go to bed. And then you have no connection with your wife. You know what I mean? The intimacy is gone.
No, and what's happening these days with so many men is a phenomenon known as porn-induced erectile dysfunction. And basically, what this is that they cannot get it up, they cannot finish unless watching pornography. Because what science knows now, there's this thing called the Coolidge effect, which basically has been shown in all kinds of animals that the male of the species will react, or their libido will slow down over time with repeated viewing of the same sexual material. However, if new sexual material is introduced, that libido shoots right back up. So you think about, your partner, if you've been married 10 years, 15 years, how many hundreds of times, thousands of times have you seen your wife naked? How many hundreds or thousands of times have you had sex? You know how that movie ends. You know everything that's going on there. You do not get the same flow of the pleasure chemicals in past time passing with the same repeated imagery. However, we talk about pornography. Almost nobody uses the same porn twice. Why? Because you get that highest high when you are seeing something new. One of the things I hear from so many of my clients is that they have a problem where they will do what's called edging, where they are searching for the piece to finish to for a long time that they know will give them the biggest hit. And then they end up, with their wife or with their partner. And how is it that this person can compete with all of that other stuff that the guy is seeing? It's just, they get these pings of dopamine all the time. Then they're with their wife or their girlfriend, and it's a flat line. If you look at men who are 20 to 25 years old, back in 1995, men who were 20 to 25, you saw ED rates around 2 to 4%, erectile dysfunction rates of 2 to 4%. Now, in that same age group, you're seeing 23 to 25% who are experiencing erectile issues with their partners. And it's totally to do with pornography.
It's interesting you brought that up, May, because your friend there sitting there trying to search for the answer to what was going on with his relationship. I mean, how many times have you come across that where people are, they blame everything but them looking at pornography? I mean, it's got to be often that's the last thing they assume that's causing them the most harm out of all their actions and relationships.
Because we don't have the education out there. There's nobody in the world, I think, who picks up a cigarette and goes, oh, this is probably going to be good for me. I know people start smoking every day, but everybody knows it's not good for them because there's education behind it. And that's really why I'm out there writing books, doing this kind of stuff. I still like doing this outreach stuff because we need to have people understand that, yes, this can be damaging. And nobody's talking about it yet it's infecting our youngest generation.
Oh, well, we appreciate you coming on and talking about it with us and our audience. I think it's a great topic. Before you go, anything you'd like to plug for yourself and your business?
Website or anything?
If anybody is interested in any kind of coaching, you can find me. My website is P Addict Recovery. That's the letter P, Addict Recovery. And I'm also on TikTok as That Corn Coach. and I usually have, because you can't say porn on TikTok, so corn has become the code word for everybody.
As a Midwesterner, I resent that.
I'm that corn coach.
As a Cornhusker fan, I resent that. What about your books? Or you said
My
books, right?
if you search you can get them through my website. If you search my name on Amazon, Joshua Shea, or you just search pornography books, you can find my 4 books out there. My latest one it's about 6 months old. It's for the addict themselves. It's called "I'm Reading This Book About Porn Addiction for a Friend."
It's a great title.
Thank you.
I looked through the titles. That was the best one.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, they're just different things out there. We just got to get the word out there. It's not, not to be shamed. It's not a moral failure. It's something that people fall into now because the elements are in place and we aren't educating anybody about this. And that's what needs to be done.
Well, we really appreciate your time, Josh. Go check out his books on Amazon. You said, correct?
Yes.
And we'd love to have you on in the future too.
Oh, I'd love to come back. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Yeah,
Stay warm up there in Maine.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we'll have to plug all that information into the.
So many jokes.
Box.
I had so many jokes. I just couldn't say them. I'm like, I got, this is a serious topic. I can't be just dropping fucking dick bomb jokes the whole time.
I was waiting. I thought you would. I mean, I
You
came
just
in,
see my face. I just had a
came
great
in with
one.
the name
Great
Sticky
one.
Socks, and
Great
Corey
one.
changed it.
Yeah, I
So
did.
that's when I knew. That's when I knew this was all business. This wasn't no playing games.
I saw that. I'm like, God damn it, May.
Yeah.
For
I
what?
love it.
For what?
Well, I didn't know. I thought we could, But then I got the hint. I got the hint.
Yes, I figured you would. I mean, he probably would have been cool about it, but I mean, I do think it's. I mean, I don't know what your guys' takes on it.
No, it's very viable. Like, I've had to have the talks with my own boys about it. On their phones. Mama looked at their search history once and was.
BBCs.
Yeah, no, it was
Just-
quite that bad. But I mean, it was. I had to explain to him like, that's a dangerous road because.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you need something else. Like he was saying,
Yeah.
you need something else. You need something else. And the next thing you know, you're going to be on this freaking track that's just unrealistic and just crazy. So you got to rein that. You got to rein it in and not do it. And part of like when it comes to that kind of stuff with my kids, it's they're going to have it after they leave my house, right?
Yeah.
And so like I don't take my phones away from my kids when they go to bed. Now, through middle school, they couldn't have their phones in their rooms, right? But once they got into high school, it's like, they're going to have to learn how to live with this because they're going to have it with them all the time, just like we do. So they need to just start learning that, hey, if you're up on your phone at 3 a.m. in the fucking morning and you got school tomorrow, tough shit.
That's not going to be a productive day. Yeah.
Learn it now instead of learning it when you go to college. You know what I mean? I've been kind of on that road. So I've like, Coach, and I really haven't brought it up lately. Like after having this chat with that dude, I probably should talk to him again because,
you definitely.
Dude, 25% of young dudes can't get a boner when it's time to have sex because they're just their porn addiction is that bad. That's a lot.
I didn't think it was that crazy. I mean,
that's a lot.
I stumbled upon something on TikTok, some porn dude, and he was saying that through the pandemic too, like his business shot through the roof, and he went with like he's known for like the handy cam, like amateur look, and he says his number one requested thing is stepfather, like weird family shit, and it's all family.
It's just
stuff.
because it's all 50% of the fucking population is divorced.
But that's what
right?
he said.
So like
he said that is the weirdest thing that people in the world want to see, like family on family porn. He's like I don't get it. He's like, but it sells and it makes me so much money.
Well, that was what I was gonna say too with the OnlyFans thing. Like, yeah, I mean, almost all those. Have you guys ever paid anybody on OnlyFans? Do you subscribe to anybody? No, I don't even have a login for it.
No,
but a lot of people must. Or all those? Would you consider most of those people porn addicts?
Well, that's what I was wanting to see what he thought, because I would think you're not really a porn
Both
addict.
ways,
You're
right?
an entrepreneur of your body. Well, I don't know.
Well, it's like I don't want to name drop, but one of our little other fire-headed friends, his in-laws, wasn't it? Had their own
Name drop. Why do you got name drop? Just talk. What about your buddy?
like pissing from the dinner table into the
yeah.
kitchen. Yeah, you remember that one? We found the website. We're like,
Yeah.
oh, what's this? He's
Yeah.
like, get that shit out of here.
Yeah, but like you said
So funny.
earlier, with the other person you mentioned, him and his wife, like
I think they still do it. Don't they?
yeah, I bet they
Yeah.
still do.
My old boss found their website and showed it to me.
Mhm.
I'm like, really? I didn't need to see that, but
And that was like that cuckold thing. That was like, it was a lot of that. Like, and I'm just like,
Well, like he said, I mean, that makes sense, right? Because it's similar to like cocaine, where you get, you get a real high, and then
well, yeah, they're
eventually you've got to find a different way to get yourself on that same
you
level.
start making your own content and getting paid to do it on top of it. It's just added on to it.
And that's what he said. Most of these people, they were happy about the money. They justified it because of the money.
Isn't
but
that
that's
rule
not
number
what
6?
brought them- That's not what brought them the joy. It was the fact that the attention and the affirmation and the
I think it'd be the money for me.
Rule number 4, sorry. Rule number 4 is you don't get high on your own supply. And that's where the creators are starting to get down that road. They're not only supplying the content, but they're getting addicted to just supplying it. And
what are the rules? Rules for what?
You never
10
seen
crack
Scarface?
commandments. The 10 crack commandments, bro.
Scarface. I thought
Never get high on your own supply. It's fucking Biggie Smalls.
Okay, sorry.
I think it's.
I just heard that song recently, and that's the only reason
why. Well, now he's got me interested though, because I would like to find the porn video for me to produce the biggest, fattest load. And then see if I can keep reaching that moment. You know what I mean? Like cover my fucking.
He's not
wall.
coaching you that way, bro. He's trying to coach you out of it. You know what I mean?
Well, I know, but he said
you
you've got to, you'll figure out the biggest number one hit.
The one thing,
but it keeps changing. That's the whole thing. It's like it doesn't do the trick the next time.
As you go down the rabbit hole, because I mean, we're not all saints, right? We've all watched porn.
Yep.
When he was saying, you got to find that next thing, and I'm sure it varies per people. Like some people can like slowly progress through that. Like he said, some people can just have a few drinks to stop and find, but then you have the other ones that just can't. Is that what's leading more like, lots of this pedo stuff that's out there, and it's becoming more common? Like,
yeah, I wanted to bring that up
because they're just out of stuff and they're just going down this shady, seedy.
I think it just goes back to the nasty, the incest, and
I mean that's as a
for research purposes.
Nice to see everyone's adult about this. I had to.
I
just the comments on here. I was like, they can't show that one. Can't show that one.
I was like, I know it's adult time. It's adult time.
But that would have been a good question to be like, what are his thoughts on the world of child pornography and why it's out of control with like millionaires, billionaires, very high successful people. You see athletes getting caught with it. Like, what the fuck's going on here? Yeah. What is that draw and what is that need to see? Some little kid. That's fucking.
Well, I can
disgusting.
see because you went down all the other trails. Like, once you start going this way, is like old or young. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
Like John Kitna's son.
Everything in moderation. You gotta
child porn.
John Kitna's
that
son.
in.
Who?
Yeah.
John Kitna's son.
John Kitna's son got dismissed and could serve a shit ton of time in prison. And he was a college quarterback at Florida, and he got busted with child porn on his phone. Like shit happens. And it's wild, especially like if you're in that kind of spotlight and that kind of walk of life. Like, any kind of slip up, boom, they're looking to have somebody on a billboard.
The other thing I wanted to ask him too, because he brought up scientists and stuff. They have done studies with like rats. One rat banging the other rat. After. I don't remember because I'm totally spitballing on the numbers, but after a while, the rat is a little more disinterested in the one female rat. But if they keep introducing new female rats, the rat will fuck until he literally dies. You know what I mean? Because it's new every time.
Yeah. You want what you can't have.
At a certain point, though,
a lot of people chase
it is our chemistry though to like seed the earth, I guess. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I feel like monogamy really isn't like
We weren't made.
not
We-
meant to be. You know what I mean? And
No,
like
we
humans,
weren't. We weren't
always
made
fight
for
this.
one. We were made for all.
Yeah.
I don't know about
Boys
that.
to
Like,
Art.
can we
hang
go
girls.
back to
know
the
about that,
days where
Art.
I carry a big stick and I got fucking 50 bitches?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But you could even go back even further, and it's, oh, hey, that's a handsome man. Oh, that's a handsome woman. I'm gonna have both of them. That
Yeah.
like that was
Oh, there's some
that was the
places
way
that
of the world.
it was matriarchy. You know,
Yeah.
the ladies ran the show.
Yeah.
You're just some dope with a club and a dong.
Yeah. But there's too many people you always hear, like you get into a marriage of 10, 15, 20 years, and you're like, do I still got it? Can
I'm
I
20.
still go do that? You know what I mean? And then like,
Well, how much
you
of
know,
that
you-
is fueled by porn, though?
well,
Like,
that's
how
what I'm
much-
saying. Like,
the fact
is
you're
it fueled by
watching-
porn, or is it fueled by like, I just want to feel young again to
Yeah.
see if I
No,
even got
that good
it,
old
and then
life.
you just stop.
That library of the spank bank, you need that. Like
Yeah.
you do after a while. It's like, you know, as you're going, you're like, what scene are we going with today?
Yeah.
You know?
Or can I put my finger in your butt? Like, what are we doing?
I am so impressed by how much you guys held in until after he left. That's very good.
Yes.
That's good job.
Oh, there's so many lines too.
I didn't know.
Like
I
when he
didn't
said
know.
you just a snowball
word.
effect, I was like, really, guy? Really? Like, I mean,
I was waiting because if Devin was gonna come across the bow, I was gonna be like, oh,
I
fuck it.
almost
If-
did.
I'm
a
going back
handful
to
of
sticky
times.
socks. Here we go.
I almost
know?
did a couple of times, but I was like, serious moment. Can't, you know.
Do you think that there is a faction of a psyop going on with the pornography industry?
What's a psyop?
A psychological operation on
Oh,
the human experience by allowing porn to be so accessible.
I just feel like it, like he said, it's so been out there for so long. It's just there's really no way to rein it in. You know, especially with VPNs and everything like he was talking about. People use that shit for video games. Like they use
Yeah.
it for everything.
For YouTube TV, you name
yeah,
it.
I mean, yeah.
But I mean, they're able to rein in child porn.
Kind of.
That's what I mean.
I guess
They make an attempt and they can kind of rein in, but they make no attempt on pornography
Well, you
itself.
know, you're right. If they did make it a little more difficult, it could definitely.
Well,
But,
and
at
here's
the
rein
end
it
of the
in.
day, who does it hurt? Who's it
hear
hurting?
me out, because I asked him what was the long-term effect, and the thing he said was less babies being born. Pretty much is what I heard, right?
Yeah,
You know?
that's why. I mean, I agree. Like
Well,
that's
isn't
why I'm
that
like,
like a
nobody
eugenics
gets
thing?
behind that though, because it's
Bill
like,
Gates.
are people dying from it? You know what I'm saying? Oh, you're
Well, that's-
saying is it
That's my
a
thing.
way to reduce population?
Population control.
Why control it if it's giving you the effect? I mean, that's
Why do they have it
here's my
outlawed in
thing,
India
how-
though? That's where 1 billion people live.
How does it reduce the
yeah, but they're the ones that sue Bill.
population?
They're the ones that are suing Bill Gates because he's trying to reduce their population. You know what I mean? So they also, they also make porn illegal because they recognize the effects it has on their population.
Oh, okay, I got you there.
So you rather watch porn? Like my thing is like I'll watch porn, but if I can dump a load in the old lady, I'd much rather do that. Like
Yeah,
like,
if you can get
know
your
what I
knob
mean?
slobbed, you're doing
Yeah,
that
like,
versus it's yeah.
I'll
for
have
sure.
a million babies over watching, some
Does it-
BBC stretch out a white girl. What are we talking about?
Does it
Like,
bother your old lady that you watch porn?
I don't think so. It's not like I'm watching it every single day.
Yeah,
you
but
know.
like what he's saying is like you got to watch out because more people are becoming addicted than normal. Like because like even for me, I was older, so like my experience to porn was a little bit more limited for sure. You know what I mean? Than like say my boys are. They see way more porn at their age than I ever did, and I always
Yeah.
had to tell them to rein it in. So I see where it could be a problem.
Plus, I'm a lazy old sack of beans in the bed. Like I watch porn, I'm not being like, God, I could do that, or do I want to do that? No, I watch that because that's kind of cool.
I just
And
want to
then
get
when
my.
it's time to go in the sheets, I'm just gonna lay here, get on top,
Well,
and
I
give
was
me
just
30
curious, like the
seconds.
psychological effect it has on your partner, because obviously, does
Should
it
we
affect
bring the
your
women
partner?
in? No,
I mean, I'm just curious if you've never had that conversation. That's
no,
all.
I've never
Yeah.
had. No, I didn't think about it.
Well,
because
I'm not interested in other women.
No. I mean, some couples love that. Some couples like to watch porn. Or,
I mean, maybe
or-
that's why there's swinger couples too. Like
Yeah,
they're
maybe that's
addicted
the
to it.
start of
Both
it.
of them are, and it's how
fulfilling
they
their
go
addiction.
down that road. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Get
Interesting.
a swinger on. Get their perspective.
Did you ask him anything about damn it, the famous fucking serial killer? And he said he attributed it to porn.
Dahmer?
Ted Bundy.
Jeffrey Dahmer?
Bundy.
Oh, Ted Bundy.
Bundy.
I think
No?
Dahmer was too, right?
I think Dahmer
was trying
to
he was trying to
I
make
think
a
there's
sex
a lot. I think I remember reading a statistic about that
Yeah.
too. About
Ted Bundy
serial
said like
porn
sex
addict.
was porn addiction was why he needed his next thing.
And being raised by a single mom.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I don't know. I think it's interesting because I don't think it's I don't know. Like he made it sound like sort of like alcohol. You know, some people can do it in amounts and not be addicted to it, and then some people can do nothing, you know, but look at porn or drink alcohol to hide their problems. But I'm always curious because it can't be like it can't be healthy at any real level. I don't think.
Addiction
Probably
or
not.
watching porn?
Watching
Any of
porn.
both.
Yeah.
But do we really? Because you hear some people, I'm not that addictive personality or type or whatever. And then
I am. I know I am.
Like the buddy that I was talking about with the working nights, he gave up nights. Like he would toss and turn in bed, he would say, until he fucking watched 5 minutes, fucking boom, boom. And then he could roll over and go to bed. Like it was wild that like he built that cycle up that his brain was like, listen, buddy,
We're not going to bed.
yeah, we're not going to bed until we, poop
Get our
on
fix.
our stomach.
Yeah.
So it was like, that's just wild. Like, and now, because like you said, the long term with the family and the wife and the sex life there, I wonder if that does take a hit because you're not watching porn for other women. You're almost watching porn to go to sleep or to get that.
get
I
the
don't know.
hit.
He was dependent.
Yeah, you're dependent on something else to produce a result.
Yeah, but to save thousands of dollars and realize that working nights is the main cog and not having to go see a specialist. I mean, that's
What
kind
a
of
great way
win
to get
too.
out of nights too.
Yeah.
Hey, look, guy. I can't work nights anymore. It's ruining my life with my family, and I'm addicted to porn now. So,
Yeah. Thanks a lot, asshole.
yeah,
Where's my separate?
it ain't worth the extra $2 an hour. Okay.
Yeah. Or you got, guys in oil-filled porta potties jerking off with a location full of dudes.
Fuck. So many guys got caught. It's so bad.
Remember
Then they're getting
Rodrigo where he
called out.
just
Yeah,
called out that one guy that
He was
just,
like, he's right there. It's that guy right there.
and he's got a Brazilian accent. That is him. That is him.
Like,
I love
just
you.
stick the
Wasn't-
lubricator
I
on the
know that
wellhead.
wasn't
Let's go.
Brazilian, but it was an accent.
I love you guys, but I mean, I hate you guys at the same time. Good shit. Let's see here. We've got who do we got coming up next week? Oh, next week, David Jackson joins the show to talk about his 23 plus years talking about Mary Magdalene.
Is that the 81-year-old?
What was he saying? Does
84. He's 84. He's
Mary
a
was Jesus' squeeze.
he's a former Catholic priest that left the service to study Mary Magdalene. And
Can we ask?
I don't
about the
know.
children or no?
Can I ask him how long it took him before he got some puss?
Is Catholic the one that are into the children or no? Am I
What?
misstepping?
The choir boys? Yeah.
Yeah, choir
Get it
boys,
all,
is that
get it
Catholic?
all out now. You guys are all horned up because someone had to talk about porn for an hour. So get it all out now so you can be responsible.
Well, I'm just wondering, is this 84-year-old? Is he fiery? Is he on top, or is he like he's gonna have to drink his tea?
Taking a nap in the middle.
All right. Well, I had to mute me. Goddamn it, I can only handle so much of him. Try to bring him back, and he's just straight fucking degeneracy. You gonna behave yourself?
I
He's
will.
gonna have a
Yeah.
stroke on live on
I
air.
know, seriously. Although you guys never
your Paul-
disappoint when you do come on. You guys bang questions, and it's all good, So well done. But God damn it.
Right side of your face is getting numb, sir. It's
So, are you with us?
All right, gentlemen. We've made fun of stroke victims, porn addicts. Let's call it a night, I think. good show. We appreciate once again Joshua coming on the show. And go check out his website. Check out
I'm
his
interested
book.
in that book, Porn Addicts for
Are
a
you gonna
Friend.
plug that stuff in the details on YouTube or what?
Yep,
How do you do
I'll
that?
put it all in the comments there. The titles of his book and the websites that you can find him on. So
This is great. I like this. Having these random people on.
Look how little this book is. It's a great book.
but well, our listeners can't hear what it is, Devin. So my
Oh,
fucking idiot.
how to win friends and influence people.
By who?
Dale Carnegie.
Oh, Carnegie.
Greatest book, one of the greatest books ever written.
We should do an episode on old Dale Carnegie.
If you haven't read How to Win Friends and Influence People, I highly recommend it. It'll change your life.
Maybe
Especially with these rough times coming up.
Maybe we should learn about the author first.
Dale Carnegie? Yeah. This is an old book too, but it's still true today.
It's fascinating. His buildings still stand in the town I was born in, Carnegie Hall.
No, it's one of the most influential books of my life. I'd say it's number 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Why are you reading it again?
Well, because
Just
you
to
forget,
dust up?
just dust up. Like, here's one thing I can tell you guys from it. One chapter is whole dedicated to it. The sweetest sound to anybody's ears is their own name. So I don't know if you've ever noticed when I meet people, I actually call them by their fucking name. I won't say, hey man, hey dude. I'll say, hey Corey, hey Chris, how's it going, man?
Well, that's how you lock that in too. That always
not
helped
only
me
that,
when I would meet people.
love it.
Yeah.
Especially somebody that you may have barely met, and then you
If
see
you
them
remember their
later,
name,
and then you say their name. They'll be like, "What?"
Because they think up top, that was very forgettable, or that wasn't memorable.
Yeah.
That's not
You know,
going to
it's so
last. And then you
funny.
come in with hey, Roger, how's your beautiful wife we talked about earlier?
A lot of this stuff, when it comes to like the stuff you bring up, Devin, is stuff I was taught at a very young age as a Jehovah's Witness. And I always find that fascinating because like
they're teaching how to sell that shit way because
and I had no clue. I had no clue.
Yeah.
You know, that's how you were like, hey, when you go to knock on someone's door and they tell you the name, you repeat their name as you're shaking their hand. And then you repeat their name continuously throughout your initial conversation. And then you write down in your little book what their name was, what they were interested in, what their concerns were. And when you go back a week later, it's, you say them by their name. You talk about stuff that you talk.
You got that deer feed in your hand. Come eat this.
Yeah, and I thought
it's the sweetest sound. People love it.
It's very powerful. Very powerful. When I get flashbacks when you say stuff.
That's just just one chapter. There's like one in there about how to be a great conversationalist. There's other chapters in there on how to criticize somebody without it being like a yelling fest. Yeah, like you always just everybody knows this shit, but you say their name and you tell them what they're doing great, and then you say this is what you need to work on,
and then you finish it off with what they're doing.
It's really that easy.
Yeah, you like degrade
really
them with honor in a sense.
There was a old adage they taught us on tact, and they said tact is the act of stepping on someone's shoe without messing up their shine.
Yeah, for sure.
Other
things, don't call them out in public.
Yeah.
The book is fabulous, and that's number 2 most influential books, Personality Plus.
Should have a Devin's
library,
like that. That'd be. Yeah. All right, gentlemen. Well, have a great evening.
I got lots. All right.
We'll be back next Monday at same time, 7:00.
Cool. I'm starting work again, so
okay. See. Well, and we will be going back to Sundays, but just for the interviews to make it easier on people. These next 2 are on Mondays. Yeah. Okay. So this one was Monday. Next one will be Monday. Then we'll be back to Sundays. Make it easy.
Yeah.
So. All right. Have a good evening, everyone.
All right. Toodaloo.
Bye.